Hello, 4Life. This is the 4Life product call coming to you from the 4Life Research home offices in Sandy, Utah. I am Mark Peterson, and today I will be your host. 4Life is a company with thousands of distributors on 6 continents who are daily making a positive difference in people's physical and financial health with patented and proprietary products. They are products that have withstood the test of time, helping people and their animal friends. Products that can help your body with today's challenges. Products you can be confident will be on the cutting edge of science for the challenges of tomorrow. They are products you can simply use and share with your loved ones, as well as build a business with if you choose. Today, I am very happy to have as our guest a gentleman and scholar whose educational background and years of research means that he may know as much about transfer factor, the science behind it, its value and benefits as anybody in the entire universe. Joining us from the beautiful island of Hawaii, I want to welcome Dr. Richard Bennette. Dr. Bennette, thank you for joining us on the 4Life product call today.
My pleasure. In the universe. Yep, maybe.
Well, I thought we should start big because we're going to talk about something small, so let's start big.
Very good.
Well, we are so glad to have you with us today, Dr. Bennette, and I was hoping that right at the first you would tell us a little bit about where you went to school and the career experiences that have brought you to be one of the preeminent authorities on transfer factors.
Sure, I'd be happy to tell a quick version of a long story. I started my college education at a community college, and I think they're wonderful things for our nation, and then transferred to California State University, where I took a course of study in the animal sciences, how to produce animals for food. I also did a science option, and so I came out of Cal Poly with a minor in chemistry. Heaven help me, but that was interesting. And then went on to UC Davis in California, at the University of California at Davis, and did a master's degree in animal science with a emphasis on reproduction of domestic animals, and got really interested in the disease processes that affect animals. And I was putting myself through graduate school, and so I needed to be working while going to graduate school. I ended up getting a job in a laboratory in the veterinary school that specialized in dairy health. And I got accepted to the PhD program there, and my major professor said, "Rick, we want you to study how the mammary gland defends itself." And to make a long story short, it was there that I got the first inklings that there was something very special about the mammary gland on how it not only protects itself, but how it protects the next generation. And we got a little glimpse. There was something in that first milk that we call colostrum that was much more than any scientist had ever discovered or ever imagined. And then about 20 years later, I got an opportunity to readdress that question, and that was in the late 1990s. And that began my career with transfer factor, but it's really gratifying to know that I got that first little awareness of it back in 1978.
Wow, you have just an amazing background in the context of where David and Bianca Lisenby discovered what had been learned about transfer factors and then have come right along with us, and we appreciate that so much. Now, a question I'd like to ask you is, what is your simple definition of what transfer factors are when you are speaking to those of us whose training is not in science, like yours is?
Well, that's always a challenge to do. But let me put it this way. When you and I walk into a crowded airport, we are very good at picking out faces that we know. And our brain is very specially wired to recognize faces because it's fundamentally asking an evolutionary question. Are you a friend or are you a foe? Transfer factors are biological information that tells our immune system, in the greatest sense, who is a foe. And the recognition can be very, very precise. And that information is stored in this little molecule that we call a transfer factor.
Wow, I love that definition, the concept of walking someplace crowded and recognizing different faces. That is a great way to describe it. Okay, now, this brings up something else in what you were saying. We often say for-life transfer factor as if it was singular. But as I have read more on the subject, I often feel like it is better to say transfer factors when we're talking about the products. I think there's a whole family of transfer factors. Is that correct?
Well, not only is there a family, there is a huge community. In the animal body, in our body, there are probably thousands of very specific transfer factors that have this recognition ability. And so, yes, it is most appropriate to say transfer factors. An analogy that people might be able to get their head around is that we've got a lot of antibodies floating around in our blood and in our tissue juices. And those antibodies are also very, very specific. So when we measure antibody, we can measure the class, and it takes a really sophisticated scientist to measure the specific antibody. And that's the challenge we have right now with transfer factors, is measuring that very specific one that's specific to a given threat.
That is great. That helps me understand better. Now, the question often arises of the difference between a drug and a nutritional supplement, since we deal in nutritional supplements here at 4Life. That happens when we're talking about transfer factor and the other 4Life products. With your background, are you comfortable giving us a quick explanation on the difference between drugs and nutritional supplements?
Yeah, a drug works in the body in spite of the body. Let me give you an example. You have a strep throat, and the doctor prescribes penicillin. Penicillin will cause that microbe to die, irrespective of anything that the body does. It doesn't work with the body, it works independent of the body. Nutraceuticals, like transfer factor, enables, empowers, provides information to the body so it can do the job that it's intended to do.
That is simple and makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, now, Dr. Bennette, sometimes I believe it is difficult for people to really understand how transfer factors work in a simple way. Can you explain how they work simply in the body?
Yes.
I'm asking you a lot of tough questions here, but you're the guy who has the knowledge.
The human body is a three-dimensional entity. All the little tiny molecules have three-dimensional conformations. Transfer factor has a conformation that is very analogous to a very specific footprint in wet sand. Only the foot that created that print will fit it perfectly. Other feet might come close, but it's not a perfect fit. And so transfer factors are, in essence, the footprint of a threat that the immune system needs to recognize. And those footprints literally reside on the surface of immune cells. And so when the bad guy comes along and it fits that footprint, the cell says, "Ha, I know you. You're in trouble now."
It recognizes the troublemakers through their footprints. I like that. Okay. Now, since I first came to know about transfer factors, I have really been impressed with the sort of universal characteristic they have across species. I think most of us think of ourselves as being quite different than cattle and chickens, and yet the transfer factors at work in all three species seem to have a common thread. Can you please address that issue for us?
Sure. If we look back through very high life forms like the human, and even go down to something as primitive as the fruit fly that a lot of scientists use to study the mechanics of biology, there are many, many, many similarities. And when nature finds something that works well, that information, that talent, that knowledge is conserved across species. Let me give you an example. Up until recent times in biotechnology, if you needed insulin for your diabetes, that insulin was extracted from the pancreases of cows and pigs because their insulin is ostensibly identical to human insulin. And such is the case for the little tiny molecule transfer factor. We can take transfer factors out of any number of animals, including the cow and her colostrum, because there's so much of it, and put it into virtually any other species, and it works because fundamentally it's the same molecule.
That is great, and I think that is one thing that has really, really helped as we've been able to get the transfer factors. Obviously it has. Now, another exciting element of the cross-species capabilities of transfer factors is the value our products can have for our pets and livestock animals. Personally, I feel our products have really made a difference for our dogs at our house. Can you explain that?
Yeah, absolutely, because we take the transfer factors from the cow. The cow sees about 2/3 of the same germs that people see in their lifetime and that dogs and pets see in their lifetime. And that information, those footprints, forewarns the dog or the cat, and thus is forearmed and able to respond quickly, because in the resistance to these kinds of challenges, timing is everything.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Now, there are two questions that I always hear from our distributors that are pretty closely related. First, are the animals we get our transfer factor products from kept in good conditions? And second, are the newborn calves deprived of the colostrum and hence transfer factors they need to be healthy?
Great question, and a question I've been answering for over 14 years. I personally visit many of the dairy farms that are producing colostrum for us for a variety of reasons. But one of the things I'm looking at is the quality of the operation. Do the animals look healthy? Do they appear to be relatively stress-free? And having been around livestock almost my entire life, I've got a pretty good eye for it. And if an animal is going to be productive and economical on a dairy farm, she has to be treated very well. And you leave her in the mud, you feed her poorly, the farmer will pay the price. Now, the calves are the next generation for that dairy farm. And so it is in the absolute interest of the dairy farmer to make sure that calf gets a really good start. And the way they do that is to make sure that the baby calf, within 8 to 12 hours after they're born, gets a couple of quarts, maybe as much as 4 quarts of fresh colostrum to empower their immune system. If they don't get that, they run a very, very high risk of getting very ill and perhaps dying.
So they are taken care of. That will make a lot of people very, very happy. Now, I have learned a lot from you in over the decade and a half that we have known each other. But recently, you've particularly inspired me in one way concerning using transfer factors with your explanation of how our bodies can best use the TF we ingest. Can you please explain that for everybody on the call?
Yeah, it's relatively simple. The transfer factor molecule is information. It doesn't provide nutrition. It doesn't provide energy. It doesn't detoxify anything. And so for transfer factor to work best in a human or animal body, that human or animal body needs to be well nourished. It needs to be relatively free of things that are toxic. And one of the most toxic things we eat these days is too much, especially too much sugar. And so people who would tend to think, well, I can take transfer factors, I don't have to worry about the rest of the body, are making a serious mistake, because it's kind of like cutting one leg off of the transfer factor. And for transfer factors to work well, the body needs to be nourished optimally, and no better company on the planet can help you do that. But there's also a lot of lifestyle and nutrition choices that the individual needs to make in order to get the most out of the transfer factor they're taking. So,
like a holistic wellness program helps transfer factor take care of you the best, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you ignore wellness, you really can't expect transfer factor to do the best job it is capable of.
Thank you so much. Now, Dr. Bennette, I have to ask you a question that I ask every guest. What are your favorite 2 or 3 For Life products?
Good question. I probably own most of them, but the ones who are really my favorites are Transfer Factor Plus, Rio Vita, and Transfer Factor Cardio. Transfer Factor Plus has got the Transfer Factor plus some other natural nutritionals that have been shown to engage and empower and support the immune system in ways additional to transfer factor. So we get this 1 + 1 = 5 effect that we scientists call synergy. The Rio Vita product is a great product for me because if I need what I think is an extra shot of transfer factor, I'm going to get on an airplane, I'm going to be traveling into, time zones 5-6 hours away, Rio Vita is something I'll grab. The other reason I like Rio Vita, it's probably got the best collection of powerful plant antioxidants available today. And as I've watched the scientific literature, a lot of the effects of aging, I just turned 65, so I'm paying attention to this, are effects caused by this chronic oxidative stress that we're under just by virtue of being alive. And the extent to which we can buffer that with a regular dose of a broad array of different kinds of antioxidants, we can forestall the aging process.
Well,
and then transfer factor cardio is a targeted transfer factor, and it's aimed at addressing some of the threats that cause problems in the blood vessels of our hearts. And these problems begin when we're teenagers. And so addressing those kinds of oxidative damages that occur, we can make a heart a lot healthier long before the first signs of a heart problem arrive.
Those are 3 products you wouldn't want to be without, right?
There are 3 products that are on the top shelf.
With me, too, interestingly enough. Perhaps it's the similarity in our age group. Okay. Now, we have some questions from a few of your distributor and employee fans. I know that you have something else you need to be doing, but can we take just a few more minutes and ask those?
Of course, of course.
Okay, here's my favorite one. This is the loaded question of the year. But Alice Lillo, right here in the Field Development Department, asks, would the dinosaurs have been better off with transfer factors?
Well, dinosaurs come from reptiles that are egg-laying animals, and egg-laying animals put their transfer factors in the egg yolk, and then the developing embryo incorporates those transfer factors. Unfortunately, what took the dinosaurs out was a meteor strike that turned the planet dark, and maybe a volcanic explosion that turned the planet dark, and I'm just sorry to say, no transfer factor is going to make you survive decades of global darkness.
Okay. So I guess the bottom line there is transfer factors have been around as long as something's been swimming or creeping or crawling or flying on the earth, right?
Yeah, there's evidence that immune memory, hence transfer factor, exists in the evolutionary tree as low as the sharks.
Wow, that's incredible. Okay, now from Tennessee, Jeff Altgilbers, one of our Platinum International Diamonds, asks, because transfer factors are proteins, does it make them less effective to take digestive enzymes at the same time?
That's an insightful question, but the generalization there is they're proteins. They're actually not proteins. They are too small to be proteins. And so digestive enzymes, whether you take them as a supplement or the very, very powerful enzymes that are produced in the small intestine, don't interact, won't degrade transfer factor because it's already a polypeptide, the breakdown product of protein. And so it slides right through the gastrointestinal tract and absorbed there unharmed by enzymes.
That is great to know, because I think people get concerned about taking products together. Okay, now, Juliana Beltran from Rhode Island asks, are there any side effects from taking transfer factor?
In and of itself, as a polypeptide, it is harmless. I know a pediatrician who took a whole bottle of transfer factor before he would prescribe it to his patients. However, if someone has an immune system that's kind of lazy, and that happens for a variety of reasons, and they are experiencing some challenges to their health, and you take a lot of transfer factor, and then it wakes up the immune system, and these various mediators that are secreted by the immune system to deal with these challenges can make a person feel sick. It's the same reason you feel sick when you get the flu. It's the body's response that actually makes you feel sick. And so it happens occasionally. It's fairly rare. It doesn't last very long. But occasionally people will take transfer factor and say, "Oh, I felt bad." And I said, "Good, it's working."
There you go.
But it's very rare. But so, it's probably one of the safest nutraceuticals out there, even taken in extremely large doses.
That is reassuring, and it sure has worked for me and my family. So we're on board, and I know so many distributors that has also. Now, Martha Fajardo from Rhode Island would like to know, is transfer factor all natural?
It's as natural can be, and it will stay that way for a long time, because science has yet to figure out the exact sequences of these amino acids that would constitute a given transfer factor. Once that happens, it's theoretically possible to synthesize it, but figuring out that sequence for all the thousands of transfer factors that are out there would be a $1 million project, when it's so much easier just to go natural and get it from the cow.
It's good that we have something like transfer factor that gets shared between species, and there seems to be such an abundant supply of it. That is fabulous. And we appreciate all of the information you've given us today, as well as the research and watching out for where our animals are in the farms, everything you do for the company. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. It's been my life's great work.
Well, and you keep going with it. Thank you for being on the call today. And I would also like at this time to thank all of the distributors who joined us on the call today. Plan to join us on 4Life Live and the product calls weekly. Use them both to introduce individuals to the opportunity of better health that is 4Life, and have your teams listen to better understand the products and learn ways to build their businesses. Next week, Dr. Robert Robertson, Jr., medical doctor, retired, will be joining us on the call, and the subject will be why 4Life products. I think that's going to be a great call. I know that you and Dr. Robertson are great friends, Dr. Bennette.
Yes, we are.
Well, if you want, I want to say to all the distributors, and to you, Dr. Bennette, if you want to listen to this call again or have someone else do so, please call 530-881-1219 and use the meeting ID 841-832-629, followed by the pound sign. Again, I'll tell you that quickly. The number to call is 530-881-1219, and use our meeting ID, which is 841-832-629, followed by the pound. Also, please make sure you listen to 4Life Live on YouTube. And by the way, these 4Life product calls are on YouTube also, so you can find them both there. Thanks, everybody. Make it a great week. And thanks again, Dr. Bennette.
Thank you.
Goodbye.